Little House on the Prairie, a trigger warning. This is it. This is the moment the world went completely woke mad, isn't it?
Where are your angry tears, Kevin? Why are you not crying angry tears after seeing that clip? Obviously, it's absurd to put a trigger warning on something like Little House on the Prairie. It's absolutely sweet as pie. That's the whole idea behind it. But of course, the university thought that it would be offensive because of its stereotypical depictions of of Native American people. But this news that has come out in the last 24 hours is to do with Cambridge University's Centre for Teaching and Learning putting out this new guidance that says that, of course, Cambridge University have already been criticised for putting they're trigger warnings, but they've renamed them content warnings.
Yeah, because trigger warnings have connotations of guns, and therefore such a term is alarming to students. I mean, do these people take special courses in insanity?
Trigger warnings, like you say, trigger warnings are triggering to some students, they thought. So now they're issuing these content notes, and this new guidance that has come out from the university is saying that, and I find this absolutely, as you said, if they take it a course on insanity, it is the most weaselly, disingenuous doublethink and doublespeak that this new guidance says that putting content notes on course material, particularly in English literature, will actually boost student attainment and will be good for academic freedom. It's almost as if they're lining themselves up so that they can keep their content notes and say that they are in line with the government legislation that is being proposed to protect academic freedom and freedom of speech. How they can argue that putting content notes that essentially warn students so that if they don't want to be exposed to that content, then they can take measures to avoid it, that could somehow be good for academic freedom. Their argument is that it will allow people to equally access course material by allowing them, and this is a quote I've got here for you, Kevin. They said it will enable, quote, students to take necessary steps to engage safely and with minimal psychological distress. And they claim that psychological distress is not the same thing as being intellectually challenged. Well, actually, being intellectually challenged is sometimes psychologically distressing. When I was a student and I read Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, I can tell you, Kevin, my copy of that book is absolutely covered with expletives because I thought that on the first reading, I found it extremely disturbing. But that is what it's supposed to be like to be a student. You need to be intellectually challenged, and sometimes that is psychologically uncomfortable. So the idea that this doesn't affect students' academic as they say, academic freedom, I think that's just double speak. The idea that that isn't going to affect a student's intellectual curiosity, I just think is completely insane.
Indeed. Of course, the TV series is based on the book by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and it was about her own childhood growing up in pioneer America, Little House on the Prairie. And one of the reasons Cambridge University, apart from the fact they've also said that there's depictions of illness. Apparently students have to be warned if there's any illness in a book, and also emotional conflict. I mean, if there's no emotional conflict in books, it'd hardly be worth writing them, would it? That's kind of a given. But of course, there are the incredibly worrying stereotypical depictions of Native Americans. I don't even know what that means. But I remember the TV series. I can't pretend to have read the book, but the TV series didn't have stereotypical depictions of Native Americans. I mean, as I say, it says the content notes are not intended to coddle privileged students and insulate them from violence. It says there is nothing wrong with content notes. Well, I say there is a lot wrong with this kind of asinine content note that should not be brought into play. It shouldn't be there. These are Cambridge students. These are the cream of our younger generation. They don't need this mollycoddling nonsense, do they?
They can say it's not coddling, but that's gaslighting. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it is a duck. This is obviously coddling. And like I said before, when you at university, you need to be exposed to challenging things. And sometimes that might be psychologically distressing. If you're not able to engage with literature like that, then I would ask whether or not you should actually be at a university. Of course, there are some students who will have experienced some kind of trauma or some kind of distress in their lives, but a lot of people have worked out their own feelings and their own experiences through the world's great literature. When I was a student and I was at sixth form college and I read Dostoevsky, I felt like I was a changed person for about a year after reading Crime and Punishment, because I was so psychologically disturbed by it. And you're supposed to be psychologically disturbed by Dostoevsky. If you're not, then there's something wrong with you. And so I think that this is a completely wrong-headed approach to literature, and it's going to damage education. So the idea that this can somehow be rebranded as being pro-academic freedom and being to the benefit of student attainment, I think just seems like doublespeak. And I think many people will be wondering whether they're just, as I say, cynically lining themselves up to be on the right side of future legislation to protect academic freedom so that they can keep their content notes.